Hallo miteinander, I'm Gesh86 and this is Yoiyami Dancers Twilight Danmaku Dancers. One title with double the dancers in it. While the Steam version we're playing dates back to 2022, this game is actually older than I realized, originally coming out in 2018 both on PC and PlayStation. As I discovered it relatively late, I was really surprised it had such a well-cemented positive reputation. Let's find out if it's deserved. Most likely it is. A 98% approval is rarely the result of collective insanity. The first thing I must comment on is that the track we're hearing may have become my new favorite title screen music. Not just among Toho, but any game I've ever played. It is unbelievably catchy and energizing. We'll be playing as Rumia, on normal aka cheerleader difficulty, and with a strange magnet as our starting item. Just from its menus and the title, this would most likely be a scrolling shooter. And even as the playing field is revealed, I wouldn't fault anyone to still think that. But something is off, isn't it? Movement is somewhat choppy and happens in these little hops, almost like it's turn-based. Moreover, there's all these vertical and horizontal lines, as if it's an arena segmented into tiles, like Mega Man Battle Network or something. It's not exactly that, but we are getting closer. It is true that enemies are approaching from the right and shooting their typical Danmaku bullets, but that is all deceiving when it comes to what this really is. See, we're not flying over a battlefield, we are dancing on a note sheet. Yoiyami Dancers is a rhythm action game in disguise, and actually best compared to Crypt of the Necrodancer or the Cadence of Hyrule. Everything you do is indeed somewhat turn-based, as all inputs must happen to the beat of the game's music. Rumia may lose her combo and possibly just sit around taking a hit to the face should our timing be too severely off. We have a hit point bar that only drains slowly upon mistakes, yet the whole 4-level game must be beaten on this one life. Regaining health is frequently possible, so the occasional screw-up is excused, especially in the early game. Such low lethality should not be mistaken for an easy time though, oh no. We'll get to that subject eventually. The power icons enemies drop upon defeat will slowly but surely strengthen Rumia's offense. You don't ever lose attack power, nor does it cap out all too quickly, so there's this nice feeling of progressively getting stronger over your journey. We've boosted our attack value to an already impressive 14, and it's mostly thanks to the strange magnet item. It lets us absorb power icons one tile away, and that's much more comfortable than having to directly land on them. I try to hang on to the magnet for as long as sensible. You sometimes get chances to exchange your held item, often after beating mini-bosses, and we do want to grab something else at some point. A Remu with a strikingly round face is our first boss. There must have actually been donations. The art style of this game is appropriately pleasant and cutesy, and the sprite work is also quite detailed. I wouldn't change a thing about how Yoiyami Dancers looks nor sounds. Remu only has 2 spell cards, so this should be quick. The first features charms, homing amulets, and exorcising needles, whereas the upcoming pattern revolves around the iconic yin-yang orbs. Our interface also shows a graze counter. Grazing is different here than what you may be used to. Hopping over, as in taking the position of an adjacent hazard, counts as a graze. Frequent grazing not only avoids damage, but grants you a temporary attack boost. Reimu's second spell gives us many opportunities to graze vertically through the orbs. If we're situated left of an incoming shot, you'll often see an arrow pop up above Rumia. That's a visual aid for the player, telling us we are in a position to graze. Reimu has been successfully knocked out. A strange choice for a stage 1 warm-up boss, but more sensible if we regard Rumia as the stage 1 boss for the incident of involuntary dancing fever. What could be the secret behind that? Hopefully it's not like that medieval French town where people actually dance themselves to death due to a brain disease. I was immediately reminded of that when I first heard about this game's story. Time passes between stages 1 and 2, more powerful enemies are arriving with the evening, for example teleporting earth rabbits. One thing you'll notice when browsing opinions about Yoiyami Dancers is that even though most people are happy with what they're playing, almost everyone points out that the game is brutally difficult. I have in fact not beaten normal mode myself yet. What's just so interesting about that is that experience with Danmaku shooters does not help you at all here. Despite the similar look, the concepts of a rhythm action game are just incomparable, and little of what you know will translate. For once, you don't actually have a dedicated shot button. Whenever you move Rumia forward, the closest enemy on your lane will automatically be attacked. We have a different move where other games would have their shot button. It's the charge up. Pressing that will have Rumia stay on her spot for this turn. On the following, she will then hop 2 tiles far instead of 1. If you happen to attack with the charge, damage will increase significantly. Try as I might, I can never help allowing the fairies of stage 2 to zone me into the middle lane. You can slip between their shots through diagonal movement, and that I don't is a bad habit that I really need to work on. With a game that can be this overwhelming, habits quickly cement themselves. Would you believe that Rumia here is the mechanically simpler character? The secondary protagonist, Eternity Larva, is even more complicated in usage. The summer-obsessed butterfly fairy doesn't have items, but an upgrade system of taking or keeping akin to Gradius. Speaking of items, picking up this yummy grilled chicken was fully intentional. Our magnet has served us well enough, but I fear we wouldn't live much longer if we didn't bring this portable, single-use full heal. Some items work passively on their own, but this chicken must be devoured with a push of the item button. A few more words on Larva. I find her super interesting to play as, arguably even more than Rumia. As a caveat though, she has a completely separate campaign, meaning different levels as well as bosses, which are even more challenging than these. I indeed had the idea to show you Larva's gameplay instead, but test runs went so incredibly poorly, the video would have ended by this point. Literally game over before reaching the second boss, who in Rumia's case is Gensokyo's second most famous incident solver, Marissa. It makes sense for her to take up the mantle after Reimu's failure. When we looked at Gensokyo Night Festival last time, that game's Marissa had a cartoonishly huge hat, whereas the artwork here has an unusually small one. I guess that's where we're at now, a hat measuring contest of the many Marissas. The first spell card here is special in that the ordinary witch has a protective shield of stars. Those stars will block your shots until they're broken, but will be refreshed at certain intervals. You will only make headway on this pattern if you can land your attacks in bulk. The occasional hit will not help you. Marissa's second and final spell card is a check whether you still remember you have the charge move. The Master Spark must be avoided with a 2-tile hop. Charging is something a novice player will be tempted to underutilize or even ignore. Yet here, it is literally the solution to a puzzle. Your own hits are meant to be landed once the spark has dissipated. Surprisingly little damage is needed to win. Interestingly, Yoiyami Dancers has no spell card timer. There are some dedicated survival spell cards that work through automatic drain of a boss's health, but a purely defensive playstyle would really undermine the gameplay and difficulty here. That's peculiar, as in the official games, spell card timeout is rarely beneficial and sometimes even the possibility for a hidden hard mode. Marissa might be behind us, but Comet Summoning, Witch Hat wearing Kedama are carrying on her legacy. There are some funny enemy designs. We've also seen very fast headband wearing Kedama, pretending to be martial arts masters, I guess, when we all know they're just goofy little hairballs. Nighttime has arrived with stage 3, and the game is only getting tougher. It would feel lopsided if it didn't, of course, but let's return to why people are having a hard time getting a grip on it, me included. Rhythm action games are a pretty niche genre. I personally haven't tried anything remotely like this. Improvement only comes very slowly, even though we have the tools for it. Yoiyami Dancers has a spell practice mode, and I am grateful for that. It's a real testament to positivity that, despite being severely difficult in all but its lowest setting, e.g. Modo, folks really love this game. It's always tempting to dislike a hard game and blame that on a lack of polish, simply because you expect it to be better at it. Personal pride and all that, I guess. It's pretty easy to recognize that Yoiyami Dancers is well crafted and imaginative, it's just that it does require some major investment to get with its groove. The playing field does stretch over the full horizontal of the screen, but I should point out that Rumia can only dance along the leftmost 5x5 spaces. Know that the spaces along the edges hold the danger of boxing yourself in, as it's only possible to graze through a hazard if you actually travel a tile. You may have noticed that I spend a lot of time at the frontmost position of the middle lane. That's another bad habit I need to get rid of. It happens easily, of course, because you attack by moving forward. Still, it's much wiser to keep around the center tile as you're waiting for enemies, Danmaku and power icons to arrive. Meanwhile, we've had the chance to exchange our held item again, for example for a miracle mallet or a bomb icon. Even though there's the idea of eating our chicken now and grabbing one of those to have as an ace up our sleeve against the upcoming boss, I really wanted to maximize the healing we would get. It's very debatable if that was the right course of action, but what can you do in a game this hectic? We already heard the warning signal for our hit points going into the critical. I think we are 2 mistakes away from game over, meaning we'll pop the heal on the next mess up. The person to challenge us will arrive momentarily, and technically she is non-canonical. Well, she is a Gensokian, but not someone we should know anything about, not even her real name. As you may have heard, Daiyosei just translates to Big Fairy, Greater Fairy, Chunky Fairy. If you for some reason wanted to criticize her figure, you'd call her Choyosei. Iconic Chirno is also here, but already beaten up. That's because she is Eternity Larva's first stage boss. I suppose the stories of both heroes happen at around roughly the same time. Although the ensuing barrage of Daiyosei's kunai is probably really eye-catching for something you never want to catch with your eye, I first want to mention the music of this boss fight. It's a smooth track within which I hear elements of swing and jazz from the 30s. Not exactly genres of music that rush along. And that's astoundingly relevant, as the rhythm you must do your button press in for each turn is always dependent on the music that plays. Daiyosei's boss theme has a very conservative 132 beats per minute, so the artificial delay you have to add to all your actions can really blindside and throw you off. The other extreme exists as well. I believe it's against Clown Piece when you'll really have to hammer those buttons more than you're used to, otherwise you'll be left behind. I'm not exactly great at identifying when a beat happens. Even though I gush about certain music pieces in my videos all the time, I'm not an active musician, never played in a band. I wonder if Yoiyami Dancers is easier for those who actually make music. It's possible. Oh, now here's the favorite spell card of anyone who has ever played this game. Reason being, it lets you hold hands and waltz with Daiyosei, and that is just too adorable. This is a survival spell card that you are not meant to play by looking at the Danmaku. Instead, Daiyosei herself exclusively steps on safe spots, so you're meant to seek her out and hang on. Like us, the fairy is infected by the incident's curious dancing fever. Therefore, theming a spell into a couple's dance couldn't be more memorable and is absolutely genius. I think it's time to go over my closing thoughts. It's very rare that I'm total garbage at something, but still appreciate the game as a whole. There's bound to be dissonance, as you want games to be made for you. Yoiyami Dancers might be the best game I suck at. I phrase it like that because I remember the last Steam Awards had a category called exactly that. Souls-likes would usually rally their player bases for it. I recall Wolong Fallen Dynasty did. Amusingly, I wouldn't pick that one for the award, not because I don't like it, I do, but because I don't suck. It's seriously the easiest Souls-like Team Ninja has made. Yoiyami Dancers, on the other hand, fits the description with a bullseye. And that's worth a lot, even though I have maybe a 20th of Wolong's playtime on it. With that, I'm Geschichte6, this was Yoiyami Dancers, Twilight Danmaku Dancers, bis bald!